Brandon Lloyd, Fire Within Nutrition and Fitness here. I wanted to bring you some things you can do inside your home while you're quarantined. There's plenty of exercises. I'm going to give you some progressions and regressions depending on your skill level. And I hope this keeps you sane over the next couple weeks and allows you to stay healthy. So when designing a total body workout program, whether it be with fancy gym equipment or in your home with little to work with, we always want to start with the largest muscle groups first. And we're going to start with the legs. We have the front side, which is the anterior, which is primarily the quadriceps. And that's what we're going to work first. And then we'll get to the posterior muscles, the hamstrings and the glutes. So for the quadriceps, our most basic foundational movement is going to be a squat. And every home should have some form of a chair. You can use this, especially if you're not comfortable with the movement. Basically, you're going to push your hips back, allowing your knees to bend until you find the chair. Now, if you're more advanced, you can just allow the chair to touch the back of your legs and come up without putting weight. And then as far as the feet, I don't want us putting all the weight into the forefoot. That's going to overload the knees. So if your heels are coming up, that's no bueno. We want to keep the feet flat, pretty much even pressure throughout. If you have more issues with the knees, keep it more in the heel. And the number one rule of any exercise is if it hurts, don't do it. So the second you feel pain, no matter what the exercise is, don't continue. Now, muscle fatigue and burning, that's a great thing, but any sharp, acute, or joint pain is not okay. All right, so once again, push the hips back, find the chair, come back up, focusing on squeezing the quads, and the glutes and hamstrings are still active as well. And you can do 10 to 12 reps. If you have weight you want to use, you can do that. If you want to hold a gallon of milk, that'll add some weight. So there's plenty of options here.
With the tag.
Now, if you're more advanced and you don't have extra weight to add and you want more of a challenge, you could do a pulse squat. And you could play with it like a ladder, such as pulse, just doing one regular squat. And then you could do 2 pulses at the bottom. And then you could add 3 pulses, 1, 2, 3, without putting all your weight down. And you could build that ladder until you really feel that burn. The next exercise we're going to go over is called the step up to balance. This is one of my favorite exercises. It also incorporates balance. And if you don't have access to doing deadlifts, this is a good way to hit all the muscle groups that a deadlift would typically hit. If this height is difficult, you can go as low as a couple inches. You could stack some bucks. But what I want to do is drive through this foot, squeezing this glute. I'm going to come up. I'll bring the opposite leg to parallel. And then we're going to come back down with control. Now, the reason we pull this leg through is it allows a complete glute contraction. If you just did this part and felt what the glute was doing, not a tremendous amount. But as soon as you pull it through, you get at least 30% more contraction of that glute muscle. You could also overload this with items on both sides as well if you'd like. Once you do 8 to 10 or 12 on one side, you can switch and make sure you keep both sides even, exactly the same. Now I'm keeping the chest centered over the hips, and I do want to get a slight pause at the top. Another way to work the quadriceps and work that balance and to get more of a stretch on them is called the Bulgarian split squat. You could take a couch, a chair, or anything in your home that you can elevate your toe on and step out. Now the shoulders are still going to stay stacked over the sternum and the hips. You're going to drop straight down as far as is comfortable and then come back up. You should feel a stretch on this back quad, plus we're working this front leg quite a bit. Only go as far down as you're comfortable with. You'll repeat 8 to 10 on each side. Even without weight, this could become very challenging. Now, one final variation you can do for the quadriceps, similar to the Bulgarian split squat, is a slide split squat. Now at the gym, I'm sure you've seen those discs that you could do mountain climbers and all kinds of different exercise. If you have a slick area, like a kitchen floor, you could probably do this in your socks, or you can use something like this reusable shopping bag to slide and basically achieve the same thing. So what I'm going to do for this exercise is the same as I did with that chair. I'll just slide back into my lunge and then slide back. Next exercise I want to go over is for the inner and outer leg. Since we no longer have access to adductor abductor machines, unless you own a gym, I'm going to show you how to work those same muscle groups with the shopping bag. So this time what we're going to do is you're going to slide out to the side, allowing the other side to go into a lunge, and then slide back in. And you're going to feel that inner leg fire big time. It's pretty challenging. So you out to the side, and then try and bring back in with control. Now be careful that the knee on this side isn't going out to the side. I want the knee to stay over that foot down into basically a one-legged squat, and then come back together. The next area of the body we want to work is the posterior of the body, primarily the legs, which is going to be the hamstrings, which is down here, the glutes, and a little bit of the low back. Will also be hitting the calves. Now, typically, any kind of hip hinge pattern is going to achieve that. So I'm going to show you a proper way to do a hip hinge, some exercises for that, and we're also going to go over some bridge variation. First of all, I want us to understand a proper hip hinge movement. It's different than the squat. We're primarily going to keep the legs straight and the hips pull back just as if there were two strings attached and somebody pulled you from behind. I still want to keep the chest up, and from the top of my head all the way to the hip, I want to keep that in a straight line. What you never want to do is to round your back. That's asking for all kinds of trouble in the low back, especially if this was a weighted exercise. So shoulders back and down, pretend that string was pulled, the hips go straight back. So we'll go back, up, and squeeze. If you wanted to do a more difficult variety that requires balance, you could do one leg, and you would go back. Usually I go just past knee level with the fingertips, and then squeeze this to come back. If you want to make it even more challenging, add the pull through, just like with the step up to balance. So down, up, squeeze. And you can carry any household item, a gallon of milk, whatever, if you want to overload yourself and you don't have access to weights. Now we're going to go over some bridge variations. To start with, we're going to do the easiest one first, which is going to be lining up the heels underneath your knees. The further out your heels go, the more difficult. So from here, I want to squeeze the glutes together first before movement and keep the core tight. And then I want to come all the way up, and the goal is to have a straight line from the knee to the shoulder, and then come back down. Now you could make it a little bit tougher by going really slow, 5 counts up, squeezing, and then slow 5 counts down. Or if you want to get more of a difficult workout, you can do one-legged, and you can go 5 counts up and 5 counts down. Or you could do faster repetitions and do more reps, really squeezing that glute. Once again, to make it harder, you can move the feet out. It's a longer lever arm, so it's more force on the muscle. That's pretty difficult. And then if you go to one leg, now it's really getting pretty difficult. To progress this, we would go to a higher surface, such as a chair or a couch. So you can put your heels up here. Now, I don't want to be resting on the calves. I want you to scoot up, and we'd be pushing through the heels, creating that bridge. You're going to get more range of motion, and it should be a little bit more difficult. And then you can go to that one leg as well, and you'll really feel those hamstrings, probably more so on this variation. You might get more glutes on the other variations. Now we're going to switch to the upper body, starting with the chest. A couple things to note with the chest. We want to make sure that our shoulders never elevate into our ears or come forward. Anything you do from this position is working more of the front delt. It's not comfortable for the joint and sometimes could even cause impingement and injury. So no matter what the upper body exercise is, I want those shoulders back and down, and the sternum should always stay in front of the shoulder blade. We're going to start with variations of the push-up. I do want to make sure you have something soft under your knees. This carpet isn't too bad, but feel free to put a blanket, fold up a towel, whatever you need to do. Now, as I go down, what I don't want is for the arms to go straight out to the side. That's a bad angle, elevates the shoulder, and can cause impingement. So I want the elbows to go back almost at a 45-degree angle so that I can keep my shoulders back and down the whole time. And as I push up, you want to squeeze the biceps in towards the center, and that's what allows us to get a chest contraction. And it'll also tone up your triceps as a bonus. Now, I'm trying to keep my back in a straight line. I'm not doing push-ups like that, although that could be a regression as long as you still follow that 45-degree angle. I still think it would be better off to keep it straight. Comes down, squeeze the biceps in. If you can't go all the way down and all the way back up, here's what I want you to do. Take 5 to 10 counts slow, controlling the way down. and then you can cheat back up and reset for that slow down. The way down is called the eccentric portion of the lift. That's actually where we get the positive micro damage to the muscle that helps it grow back stronger and more toned. Now, if you wanted to make this harder, you can come up on your toes, of course. That's an option. If you wanted more weight, you can elevate a leg. Of course, there's hundreds of variations from this as well. If you have a bag or something that slides, you could do somewhat of an archer push-up. It's a variation on it where you slide out, then slide in, then you'd switch hands, slide out, then slide back in. Now, there's a few other ways to regress this. The higher your starting surface is, the easier it would be. So if you're brand new to these, start with a higher surface like a chair or a couch. You can even do the wall. This is a little bit easier. If you wanted to make it even easier, you go to a higher surface, or you can even put your hands up against the wall and just move your feet out a little bit. So you can regress and regress and regress until you get to a point where you can do this with good form, good posture, and do it comfortably with those shoulders back and down and the chest out. So now we want to work the back. One of the best ways to do that is with no equipment at all. Some of you guys are familiar with a Superman raise, where you raise the chest and the quads up and come back down, up and back down. So you're going to be working the low back, you're going to be working the glutes, you're also going to be working the calves and hamstrings a little bit. Now, if you take a towel, we could also add in a lat pull down. So you'll come up with just the upper body, pull in, squeeze the shoulder blades together, and then back out and down. So up, squeeze, and down. Up, squeeze, and down. Next, I want to talk about the biceps. It's one of the tougher things to work without equipment, but maybe you have a dog leash laying around. Even more helpful if it's got a loop, but it doesn't need a loop. So what you can do with this is an isometric exercise. So what we're going to do with any bicep curl, first of all, we don't want the wrist curled in. That's going to overactivate the forearm and can cause some elbow tendonitis. Plus, you won't be able to contract the bicep as well. I either want it neutral or even slightly back. What I'm going to do is get a length to where it's about at 90 degrees, and I'm pulling as hard as I can, trying to generate as much contraction. This is going to help create more blood capillaries and get more flow to the muscle. Even just holding with that constant resistance, you'll start to feel it. You'll get a good burn. And it will activate the wide part of the bicep. Now you can switch and do neutral grip. It'll get more of the peak of the bicep and work the forearm in a safer way. So you could do 20 to 30 seconds, just hold it until you give out, increasing tension all along the way. And of course, we'd want to do the same thing on the other arm. Next, we're going to talk about the triceps. One of the easiest ways to work this without equipment is the floor dip, otherwise called the crab dip. And for this, we want to move the arms back behind the body, creating a bend. And the most difficult part of this exercise is not using your core and not using your heels in terms of helping with lift. So I still want the core tight. You'll push up, squeeze the triceps as tight as you can, fully locked out, and then come back down. The further your hands go back, as long as you can keep the shoulders back and down. I don't want them creeping into the ears, but if you can keep them back and down, that'll give you more range of motion and make this even more difficult. You can also pulse at the top. You could do triple pulses and back down, or you could even just pulse indefinitely and burn them out. So there's different ways. One other option would be to take our chair that we used earlier, or a couch, or a bench, or a stool, whatever's sturdy, and you can do the same thing. Easiest variation is heels under the knees. If you want to make it harder, heels go out. If you want to make it harder, you can elevate a leg, and that should give you some options as well. Now we want to talk about our core. Now, contrary to popular belief, the core is not just those abdominal muscles in the front. It's actually anything that attaches to the hips. So we don't want to just work at the front of the abs. You want to work the internal, external obliques. Your glutes are part of your core. Your hip flexors are part of your core as well. A couple ways to hit that. If we want to hit the middle, we can do mountain climbers. Now, if we use these sliders and keep that contact with the core, we can keep that tension going. If you don't have sliders, you can do the jumping variation as well. Might be a little bit more impact on your joints. If you want a really advanced exercise, There's something called a pike, where you keep your hands stationary, bring your feet towards your hands, and then slide back. And you should really feel this in the center of your abs. And then to get the relief, you can go diagonal, side to side. When you put these workouts together, make sure you choose one exercise for each of the muscle groups. So one quad, one hamstring glute, one chest, one back, one bicep, one tricep. And you could do them all as a circuit where you do 10 to 12 reps of each and pick a variation that'll challenge you in that rep range. Take a break and go through them. Or you can do each exercise individually with a 1 to 2 minute break and then repeat that exercise. It's completely up to you and what your fitness level is. You'll get more information on my podcast, the Fire Within Nutrition and Fitness Podcast. So make sure you check out some episodes. We just had one with a health expert telling you how you can boost your immune system during quarantine. And I hope you continue to use the rest of the podcast to keep you motivated. I know it's easy to give up right now and say, screw it, I'm just eating chips for the next 4 weeks. But we know this is a temporary situation. Don't let everything you've worked for go, and don't allow yourself to become complacent with your health and wellness. It's one of the few things that we can control right now, even with the circumstances we're in. So for more motivation, tune into the Fire Within podcast, and I look forward to seeing you soon.